I'm live. Okay, so last night I watched a movie called The Empty Man, and it was very bizarre and deep. It reminded me a lot of when the Fight Club movie came out and people were finding hidden meanings and explanations to that film. I've got my esposa over here on the side, so she's going to try to help me keep this in line. I see I've got somebody watching already. Um, so if you have not watched The Empty Man yet, you may want to watch this film first before you watch this video. If you have watched it, then you're going to understand a lot of these things that I throw in here because of the little Easter eggs that they've included in the film. So I'm going to start from the top of my notes. Beware the Ides of March. And you might not know what the Ides of March are, but today is March 14th. Tomorrow is March 15th. The Ides of March was when Julius Caesar was murdered by his people. And he had a fortune teller tell him in advance to beware the Ides of March. So here we are on the eve of Ides of March, and I'm going to come back to this later. So I already mentioned Fight Club. The origin of this movie was actually a comic book, and it was written by Cullen Bunn, and I'm going to discuss him more later. Disney actually released this movie. And one of the first things I was thinking after we got about 20 minutes into this movie is, why the heck is Disney involved with this? And we looked it up. It was bought out from 20th Century Fox project. So somehow there was a corporate situation where they ended up inheriting this film. And so that answers that question. I believe it wasn't produced from the beginning by them. So there's two major segments in this movie. The first segment is 20 minutes, and it's a bunch of hikers in Tibet. And the one person falls into a hole, and there's a skeleton of this big monster. He's got wings and looks really gnarly, a large skull, and kind of makes you think it's some kind of a god, because he goes into this trance-like state, and his friends are trying to pull him out of this hole, but he's in this trance-like state, and he's muttering some gibberish. And he's found a scroll of some sort where later on, if he blows into this thing, apparently it is summoning this either a spirit of this monster or some kind of a creature to come forth. And in the first segment, like I say, there's day 1, day 2, and day 3. And on the first day, he hears the creature. Second day, actually, the woman sees the creature. And on the third day, all hell breaks loose, and there's a multi-stabbing scene, and people are thrown and jump off of a cliff. So that's the intro of the movie, and it's very bizarre, and you're thinking, wow, this is a different kind of horror film. And then it shifts gears into another beginning of what would seem to be a new film that's more modern, kind of like what are those other movies where they have to do some weird ritual to get something to happen? Or you have all seen these kind of movies. But anyway, this next movie segment is teenagers. They go to a bridge, and if you find a bottle on the bridge and you blow into the bottle, then in 3 days you're going to have the empty man show up. The first day you're going, or actually the first night, you're going to hear the empty man. And on the second night, you're going to see the empty man. And on the third night, you're going to meet the empty man, which is not somebody you want to meet. So that's more of a traditional kind of folklore thing that teenagers dig, right? So when the incantations come to pass, you end up with some bridge deaths. And I'm not going to tell you how the teenagers die, but they die on the bridge. And then there's some stabbings, particularly that occur in the face area, right? And in the original 20-minute segment, there's some stabbings in the back also. So you got back and face stabbings. And as you find the next segment of the movie is progressing, you're finding that this is the 15th incantation of this monster or demon or whatever this thing is. So now I'm going to go into some of the Easter egg kind of things that they throw into the movie. Say again? Oh, okay. Let me move this so I can see if anybody's. Hello, Johan. You love Fight Club. Fight Club is amazing. We're talking about the Empty Man. Yeah, the Empty Man. You got it. So you're caught up. I have my little note thing in front of the screen here, so it might block out some of the live chat. But I'm trying to multitask as best as I can. So what now? Put it on this side? Okay. Oh, then it just took over half of my screen. Oh, now it's over the whole screen. I'm gonna have to put it back where I was. Okay, so back to the Easter eggs. So one of the things that was real significant during the second segment of the movie was the guy is doing an investigation because he's an ex-cop. And he finds out that there's this cult, and they're referred to as the Pontifex Institute. So anytime I see something like that, I look it up and see if there's anything called the Pontifex Institute. And what I discovered, there's a Pontifex University in real life, and it's a Catholic college in Georgia. And so then the next question is, what the heck does the Catholic Church have to do with this movie? Is this guy trying to make some kind of point, or is it just, you know, some kind of weird reference he wants to throw in to make it mysterious? So I will point out that the Catholic Church originally in Britain was referred to as the Roman Catholic Church. And the reason is because in Rome, Catholicism took over after the pre-Christian religious phase that was over there, which involved Julius Caesar and the ruling powers that were in charge at the time. So the College of Pontiffs is the origin of this word Pontifex. And if you look up the College of Pontiffs, this was pre-Christianity in Rome, and it existed, wasn't it 15 people that were the pontiffs? So that's kind of interesting that you've got this 15th incantation of a being, and you had 15 pontiffs. There was also a group of female virgins in this group of pontiffs that were supposed to remain chaste, but yet you wonder what's going on. Why are they dedicated to being there with these dudes? Kind of strange.
For 30 years.
For 30 years, and then they're finally allowed to go, right? Mm-hmm. So they're basically like, I don't know what they were, hostages, servants. I don't know what they were. The pontiffs were very rich and powerful people of the day, and the main dude was the Pontifex Maximus, and that was originally also the ruler of Rome. So Julius Caesar was not only the ruler of Rome, but he was the Pontifex Maximus, which is the ruler of the religious system that's in place there. So after this system changed to Christianity, the Pope took the title of Pontifex Maximus so that he could build his own power, make him the religious leader rather than the leader of Rome being the Pontifex Maximus. And let's see here. The word Pontifex Maximus is translated as meaning bridge builder. So now we've got another reference to the bridge. Well, in ancient Rome, the Tiber River is where the Romans did human sacrifice. That was the question I had is, well, why are these people dying on this bridge in this movie? Well, there was human sacrifice done in ancient Rome, and this is well before Christianity. Now, when it stopped, I'm not quite sure, but it transformed from people actually being thrown off a bridge into the Tiber River, and then eventually it became these straw-like edifices that were meant to look like people that were thrown into the river. And these sacrifices were to be done so that the crops would do well and to stave off lightning. So making sure that I got all my notes here covered. They were to appease the gods, including Saturn. And interesting, there was a scene towards the end of this movie that involved very brutal lightning. So that's kind of a small Easter egg in this. The Tiber Bridge was the Pons Sublicius. And I'm not sure if that particular bridge still stands or not. You could look it up. The other thing you can look up is called the RGI or Argei. It's spelled ARGEI. And that will give you a lot of background on the sacrifices that were done and how many people and different times. So every month, Rome threw people off of this bridge into the Tiber River. And then they also did it during the Ides of March. So now we're getting into some weird synchronicities with Julius Caesar and the human sacrifice. So again, look up, I'm not going to look up the I don't know how to say it, ARGEI, but look on Wikipedia, ARGEI. So they threw people in more modern times became straw people to replicate human sacrifice. And in the film, at the end, you see why this person, the investigator, is so interested in all of this is because his family actually drove off the bridge and died in the river. So now we've got another tie-in between the ancient Rome, Tiber River, and bridges, and people dying. So back to the Ides of March that Caesar was beware of. He was stabbed multiple times, including the back and in the face, just like characters in the film. And again, the sacrifices occurred monthly and during the Ides of March, which he was killed in the Ides of March. So it made me wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, was Julius Caesar purposely murdered on the Ides of March the same time that people were ritualistically sacrificed by being thrown off the bridge? Was that to get rid of this weird ceremony, or was it symbolic because he was the overseer of these sacrifices? I don't know the answer. Another Easter egg in this movie was on the map was the Mark Twain forest, and he drove into the Mark Twain forest and found a lot of documentation of the cult and where 5 people had died in the forest. And my son pointed out that Mark Twain wrote a translation of an early document that was called The Killing of Julius Caesar. So there's another weird tie-in in this movie between Mark Twain, Julius Caesar, and that forest. The other thing that was interesting is that Julius Caesar had a tapeworm in his brain that caused him to do a lot of odd things. And in this movie, several times, the main character was told that he had an itch in his brain that he couldn't scratch. Now, when Julius Caesar was murdered, part of the reason was to get rid of this structure of having a very strong ruler. And it backfired because his grandson became Augustus Caesar. And on the anniversary of Caesar's murder, Augustus is in revenge threw a whole bunch of people off of the bridge. And it was either like 50 or maybe more than that. I'm not sure what the number was. We looked a lot of these things up last night, and you'll see that backfired, and that throwing the people off the bridge, maybe they weren't thrown off the bridge. Maybe he just killed a bunch of people.
Maybe. I don't remember.
But anyway, this movie's got all these bizarre sacrifice references in it that tie back to history. So I'm not sure if any of these were just to harness historical facts for the purpose of being mysterious, or if there's some deeper meaning here. And I would like people to tell me what you think about this. This is the second movie in a row that we watched from Netflix that included the rise of a very important cult-like leader. The other film was Vivarium. So if you want to watch another odd film about creating this weird cult-like leader, you could see that one as well. It seems as if the road's being paved for the Antichrist to arrive in real life. This is art influencing reality, it seems like. Now I'm going to return to the writer. You might think that seems a little far-fetched, what I just said, but this particular writer wrote a story called Blossoms 666. And in that story, the people are trying to become the Antichrist. So now that gives a little bit more validity to what I just said about this story incantating a real creature. He also wrote The Damned. And in The Damned, there's a segment on the Wikipedia page that says 3 days dead. And also in this movie, I started thinking about the 3 nights. On the third night, this thing comes back. That's the polar opposite of what Jesus did. Jesus died, and on the third day, he rose. And in this movie, on the third day or third night, which is opposite of day, this thing came back. And it seems to me like it's an Antichrist kind of reverse reference. So this is the summary of all of the bizarre tidbits that I've seen in this movie, The Empty Man. Like I say, I encourage some comments below. I'm going to leave this up here. I hope you found this interesting and perhaps learned a little bit about ancient Rome. I did not know that they committed sacrifices. I didn't know that people were thrown into the Tiber River off of a bridge. And I still am wondering if the murder of Julius Caesar has anything to do with that sacrificial time period. And tomorrow is the Ides of March, March 15th. So beware the Ides of March. Ooh.